The door slammed shut with a sharp echo that seemed to shake the walls. No crowd, no cameras. Just silence, and one man standing face to face with Bruce Lee inside a locked room. Whoever did this thought it was a test, maybe even a trap. They believed that removing the audience, the pressure, the outside world would somehow limit him. But what they didn't understand was this. Bruce Lee didn't need space to dominate. He only needed a moment. At first, nothing happened, just stillness. The kind that makes your heart beat louder with every second. The man who locked the door smirked, thinking control was in his hands. But then, something shifted. A presence. A calm intensity that filled the entire room like a storm about to break. Bruce didn't move fast. He didn't rush. He simply stepped forward. And in that single step, everything changed. The air grew heavy. Confidence turned into doubt. And the one who thought he had the upper hand suddenly realized he wasn't trapping Bruce Lee. He had just trapped himself. The sound of the lock clicking into place didn't just seal the door. It sealed the fate of the man who thought he was in control. Inside that room, every inch of space suddenly felt tighter, heavier, as if the walls themselves were watching what was about to unfold. Across from him stood Bruce Lee, completely still, completely silent. No anger, no panic, not even a hint of confusion. Just awareness. Pure, razor-sharp awareness. The man expected resistance, maybe shouting, maybe a sudden attack. But what he got instead was far more unsettling. Bruce Lee simply looked at him, not with fear, but with a calm that felt almost unnatural. It was the kind of calm that doesn't come from confidence alone, but from absolute certainty. Every second that passed without movement began to stretch, turning into pressure that the other man wasn't prepared for. He tried to maintain control, shifting his stance, cracking his knuckles, forcing a smirk onto his face as if to remind himself that he had planned this, that he had the advantage. But something wasn't right. The silence wasn't empty. It was loud. Louder than any fight, louder than any scream. It was getting into his head. Bruce Lee took a single step forward. Not fast, not aggressive, just one step. And yet it felt like the distance between them disappeared instantly. The man's breathing changed. Slightly faster now. His shoulders tensed without him realizing it. That one step carried more weight than 1,000 rushed attacks. It wasn't just movement. It was intention. Then came the shift. Subtle, almost. Invisible, but undeniable. Bruce's posture adjusted, his focus narrowing like a blade. His body relaxed even more, but in that relaxation was something dangerous, something controlled. The man felt it before he could understand it. His instincts started screaming at him, telling him something was wrong, that this situation wasn't what he thought it was. He made the first move, out of pressure, out of fear disguised as aggression. And that was the mistake. In the blink of an eye, the calm shattered into motion. Not wild, not chaotic, but precise. Every movement had purpose. Every action felt inevitable, like it had already been decided before it even happened. The room that once felt like a trap now felt like a stage where control had completely shifted. The man who locked the door began to realize something chilling. He hadn't confined Bruce Lee. He had removed every distraction, every limitation, and placed himself alone with someone who didn't need space, didn't need time, didn't need anything except the exact moment he was given. The silence wasn't empty. It was calculated. From the moment the door locked, Bruce Lee didn't react the way most people would. No wasted movement, no unnecessary expression, just observation. His eyes didn't wander. They studied. Every detail, every shift in posture, every breath the other man took was being read like an open book. To an untrained mind, it looked like nothing was happening. But in reality, everything was already in motion. Bruce Lee wasn't waiting. He was processing, measuring distance, timing, rhythm. The way the man shifted his weight slightly onto his back foot, the tension in his shoulders, the forced confidence in his stance, all of it revealed more than words ever could. The man began to feel it, though he couldn't explain it. That quiet gaze, that still presence. It started to chip away at his certainty. He expected intimidation to work the other way around. He thought locking the door gave him control. But standing there, under that unwavering focus, it felt like he was the one being cornered. Bruce Lee's breathing remained steady, almost invisible. No rush, no sign of adrenaline taking over. It was control in its purest form. While the other man's chest rose and fell a little faster with each passing, second Bruce stayed anchored, grounded in the moment. That contrast alone created pressure. Silent, invisible pressure that kept building. A slight tilt of Bruce's head, a subtle shift of his stance. Movements so minimal they could be missed in a blink, yet each one carried intention. He wasn't just standing there, he was positioning, aligning himself perfectly without giving anything away. It was like watching a storm gather without a single gust of wind. The man tried to shake it off. He moved, paced slightly, rolled his shoulders, trying to break the tension. But every movement he made only exposed more, his impatience, his nerves, his need to act. And Bruce saw it all. Not reacting, just absorbing, letting the other man reveal himself completely. Time stretched in a way that made every second feel heavier. The room felt smaller, tighter, like the air itself had thickened. And in that space, Bruce Lee's presence only grew stronger, not louder, not more aggressive, just more dominant in a way that didn't require force. It was a different kind of power. The kind that doesn't show itself through noise or speed, but through control, through patience, through the ability to remain still while everything else begins to fall apart. The man didn't realize it yet, but he was already losing, not because of any strike or attack, but because he had stepped into a mental battle he wasn't prepared to fight. The shift didn't happen loudly. It wasn't dramatic at first. It began as something almost invisible, a change in energy so subtle that most people would miss it entirely until it was too late. In that locked room, the tension that had been building between the two men suddenly reached a breaking point, and Bruce Lee moved. Not rushed, not chaotic, controlled. The man who thought he was in charge barely had time to register the movement. One moment Bruce was still, the next moment the space between them collapsed. It didn't feel like a physical attack at first, it felt like the room itself had reacted, like gravity had shifted toward a single point. Bruce Lee's body moved with precision that seemed impossible to track. Every motion was stripped of hesitation. No wasted energy, no extra force. Just pure efficiency. The kind of movement that doesn't announce itself before it arrives. The man tried to respond, but his reaction came a fraction too late. That fraction was everything. The confidence that once filled him started to break apart in real time. His stance, which moments ago felt strong, suddenly felt unstable. His mind struggled to catch up with what his eyes were seeing. Bruce wasn't fighting in a way he expected. There was no predictable rhythm, no obvious pattern to read. It was fluid, adaptive, almost alive in its unpredictability. A single exchange of motion changed everything. The man's attempt to assert control collapsed instantly under pressure he couldn't match. It wasn't just speed that overwhelmed him. It was timing. Bruce Lee seemed to exist slightly ahead of every action, as if he had already seen it, before it happened. The room became a blur of controlled movement and immediate consequence. The man's aggressive energy, which he believed would dominate the situation, was redirected effortlessly. Every step he took forward seemed to create an opening he didn't intend. Every adjustment he made only exposed him further. Bruce Lee's presence didn't grow louder. It grew sharper. Each motion was deliberate, each angle calculated without visible thought. It was less like watching a fight and more like witnessing a correction of imbalance. The man's strength meant nothing when it couldn't connect, couldn't land, couldn't find stability. Breathing changed. Panic began to replace confidence. The realization started to creep in that this wasn't a struggle of equal force. It was a complete mismatch in awareness and control. Bruce wasn't reacting anymore. He was dictating. Every second belonged to him, even in motion. And just as quickly as it escalated, it stabilized again. Bruce Lee returned to stillness, but the meaning of that stillness had completely changed. It was no longer calm before action. It was dominance after action. The man stood there processing what had just happened, struggling to reconcile expectation with reality, realizing that the situation had already slipped far beyond what he believed he could control.